Distinguished guests, fellow teachers and teacher educators, welcome to the 4th English Teacher Educators Conference, co-hosted by the British Council and the English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad. Firstly, I'd like to introduce our colleagues, guests and friends on the dais. Rob Lynes, Director, British Council, India. Professor Sunaina Singh, Vice Chancellor, English and Foreign Languages, University, Hyderabad. Professor Paul Gunasekar, Dean, English Language Education at the English and Foreign Languages University. Professor Santhosh Panda, Chairman of the National Council for Teacher Education. Sanjay Arora, National President of ELTAI, the English Language Teachers Association of India. And George Pickering, representing IATEFL, the International Association for Teachers of English as a Foreign Language. My name is Michael Connolly, and I'm the Assistant Director, English Partnerships for the British Council in India. Some of you may be wondering who I am, and where is Alison Barrett, who's been here for the last 4 years. Well, standing here today for me is a bit like walking out at number 4 for India in a test match after Sachin Tendulkar retired. It's quite an intimidating experience. But luckily for us, our little master, Alison Barrett, she hasn't retired. She's just moved up the batting order, and she is now representing South Asia. I'm sure I speak for everyone who has worked with Alison over the years. I'd like to thank her for her dedication to this conference and for her continued support for teacher education in India. Today we have nearly 1,200 people enrolled in this conference, and judging by previous years, we hope to have more than 20,000 people following us online over the next few days. I'd like to thank all our speakers and delegates from across India, of course, but also our delegates and speakers from the UK, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Nepal, Mexico, Nigeria, Malaysia, the US, and more than 20 countries around the world. I'd also particularly like to welcome teacher educators and master trainers who work on British Council partnership projects and who represent the more than 8,000 teacher educators we have worked with over the past 6 years. To our trainers from Karnataka, Maharashtra, Punjab, Bihar, Assam, Delhi, Mumbai, Sirsa, and Sitapur, thank you for your commitment and enthusiasm, which inspires us and brings me to work every day. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, we have a large online audience, which is rather scary. As a traditional thing, we like to welcome all of our online guests. I would like, at the count of 3, everyone to wave at the cameras and say, "Welcome to Hyderabad." Okay? So, 1, 2, 3, welcome to Hyderabad. Great. Okay. I've been trying to think of a good way of opening this conference, and I thought of a quotation, one of my favorite quotations, which I've always wanted to use at a conference and never had a good excuse. But today is the day where I'm going to use that excuse. The great Irish playwright, novelist, and all-round wonderful human being Samuel Beckett wrote, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail again, fail better." Sam was a great man, but he was a terrible teacher, but he was a great innovator. And I think this quotation sums up how we as teachers and teacher educators live our lives and how all real innovation happens. The first time we teach or train, we probably fail. But we try again, we experiment, we reflect, and we keep trying. Teachers are ever trying, and we are at our best constant innovators. As teacher educators, we must support teachers in that, and we must practice what we preach, ever reflecting, ever developing, ever innovating. And there's nowhere better to share those experiences than at a conference such as this. So have a great 3 days. I'd like to begin the inaugural ceremony by inviting Professor Paul Gunasekar, Dean of the English Language Education at the EFLU, to say a few words. Paul, thank you.
Mr. Rob Lynes, Professor Sunaina Singh, Professor Santhosh Panda, Mr. Michael Connolly, Mr. George Pickering, Dr. Sanjay Arora, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the English and Foreign Languages University, I welcome you all to the 4th International English Language Teacher Educators Conference. It's not accidental that EFLU is co-hosting this conference. The mandate of the Central Institute of English, when it first was set up in 1958, was to improve the standard of the teaching of English in India, to provide for the study of English language and literature, to organize research in the teaching of the subject, to undertake and facilitate advanced courses, seminars and conferences, and to train teachers of English. This last part of the mandate, quite remarkably, became CIE's first professional function when the first in-service teacher training program was organized from September to December 1958 for about 30 teachers of English. The program, incidentally, included the legendary Jack Bruton of the British Council as one of the trainers. In its second avatar, CIE became CIEFL in 1972 when the Government of India decided to expand the scope of the Institute's academic programs by including the teaching of foreign languages and conferred deemed university status on it. Accordingly, the teaching of German, Russian, and French, and the training of teachers of these 3 languages was introduced in 1973. Equally importantly, in the same year, CIEFL launched its first distance education program, the postgraduate certificate in the teaching of English. Thousands of teachers of English have done the PGCTE in the last 40 years, and it continues to be the flagship program of the university. In its third avatar, CIEFL became a full-fledged central university in 2007. The mandate of EFLU now includes disseminating and advancing knowledge by providing instructional, research, and extension facilities in the teaching of English and foreign languages and literatures in India, as well as training language teachers in methods and approaches appropriate to the Indian context, and providing expertise in language and teacher education to foreign professionals. It is evident that teacher education and development have always been central to the goals of this premier institution. I'm delighted, therefore, that EFLU is co-hosting this extremely significant Teacher Educator Conference with the British Council. The theme of the conference this year, Innovation in English Language Teacher Education, is an essential attribute in the profile of the university. The National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education, 2009, posits, and I quote, "Any system, in order to be forward-looking, must be bold in encouraging experimentation and innovation, and also be involved with constant review of the outcomes of such efforts. The field of teacher education should be no exception. By choosing innovation as its central focus, TEC14 hopes to provide a forum for teacher educators and teachers of English to showcase their innovative practices in the training classroom and the language classroom, respectively. Given the extraordinary diversity of teaching contexts in India, the practices and experiences that will be highlighted at the conference will equip the delegates with skills and strategies to deploy creative ways of solving common classroom problems that they, as practitioners, regularly confront. I'm confident that the conference will be an appropriate platform for the exploration and celebration of the tremendous diversity of the country's innovative pedagogic practices in relation to classroom methodology and materials, learner attitudes and expectations, formalized teacher development, and the use of technology. Equally importantly, I hope this conference will foster a vibrant exchange of ideas and experiences in both pre-service and in-service teacher education programs. A word about our long association with the British Council. We know that over the years, scores of EFLU faculty and alumni have done postgraduate courses in British universities, courtesy of the British Council. What we perhaps don't know is that the initial funding for the Central Institute of English came from the Ford Foundation, and notably, faculty support from the British Council in the form of Bruton, Barron, and George, what we referred to as the Big Three of British ELT at the time. We're therefore delighted that 56 years later, the relationship between the university and the council continues to flourish. This landmark conference, ladies and gentlemen, is a celebration of the many successes in teacher education that we have enjoyed and a timely reminder of what remains to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'd like to introduce Rob Lynes, Director, British Council, India.
Thank you very much, Michael. Vice-Chancellor, Professor Sunaina Singh, Professor Paul Gunasekar, Professor Santhosh, Panda, members of the dais, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning and welcome to this fourth Teacher Education Educators Conference. It's wonderful to see all of you here this morning and most of you looking happy, which is great. And I'm sure by the end of this conference, all of you will be very happy. I often get asked why I think this conference is so successful, and I cite three reasons. The first is because I think education is one of the most important things in the world today. And that's why this conference remains very relevant. The second reason I give is because the delegates who come to this conference bring knowledge, experience, and a passion for their work, which makes the content and input so very high. And the third reason I give is that because the delegates are made up of teachers and teacher educators, we always start on time, which is always, I think, a very good sign for a conference. I was reminded of that at breakfast this morning when I was running a little bit late. One of the delegates came up to me and she pointed at her watch and asked me to hurry up and finish what I was eating. And she said, straighten my tie and move quickly and in an orderly fashion into the hall, where she told me to sit down quietly and to remember to speak very clearly when I give my welcome address. I'd like to thank that teacher for those words of encouragement this morning. She's obviously an excellent teacher, and she can spot a disruptive delegate immediately. I would like to thank you, Professor Singh, for your continued support, not only with this conference, but also through our joint efforts in ELT research, and in linking the best of UK and Indian scholarship in the field of English. This conference is also supported by the two largest teacher associations in India and the UK, ELTAI and IATEFL. And I'm delighted that we have Sanjay Arora, National President of ELTAI, and George Pickering, representing IATEFL, with us here today. And of course, we would not be here without the support of our principal sponsors: Trinity College London, Oxford University Press, Collins India, Cambridge University Press, and British Council IELTS and APTUS. This TEC conference is but one part of the British Council's work in English in India. We have worked with 12 state governments, training more than 8,000 teacher educators, who in turn have worked with over 800,000 teachers across the country. Our work in ELT research and publications with UK and Indian partners brings the best of UK expertise to India and helps bring rich and diverse Indian ELT to the world. And through our digital and self-access work, we aim to provide high-quality resources for teachers, teacher educators, and learners through a variety of media from print to smartphones, thus enabling English for all, regardless of their access to technology. And in addressing the conference theme of innovation, this is perhaps a pertinent point to start. Innovation is not simply advanced mobile technology or web-based solutions, though this is clearly important. Innovation is about people. You, who are the teachers, teacher educators, administrators and academics, whose driving force is improved learning outcomes. Innovation is not an end in itself, but a means to help young people to meet their aspirations. So what does it take to be an innovator in education? Well, first of all, I believe that you all have a responsibility to put aside your fears and to encourage and try out new ways of teaching with or without technology. You owe this not only to your present students, but to future generations. Innovations are not created via bright ideas alone, but are honed through practice, feedback, as Michael has already said, taking risks. To innovate, you need time, energy, and this willingness to take risks, which also means being prepared to fail. You will also need to be reflective, since innovators reflect what is working and what is not. And when things aren't working, you will need to be creative and be prepared to change. With your colleagues and others, you will need to be collaborative, since sharing is vital to innovation in the classroom. Innovation isn't easy, but it is essential. And as Professor Gunasekar said, the National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education states that any system, in order to be forward-looking, must be bold in experimentation and innovation. And nowhere is that more relevant than here in India. The multilingual, multi-ethnic nature of this vast country necessitates and indeed stimulates innovation. But what does it mean in a practical sense for teacher education? How does one equip millions of teachers to cope with this diversity and to become innovators in their own right? For an administrator, it might be through systemic implementation of teacher education programs. For example, one of our projects in partnership with the Municipal Corporation in Mumbai, innovation is the day release of teachers, allowing them to reflect upon what they learn, planning, implementing, perhaps failing, but ultimately, we hope, learning and improving. And what of the role of technology? Technology can be an enabler and can promote innovation. And that is the key. Technology in itself is not the real innovation, but technology is innovative in what it enables the user to achieve. The English in Action project in Bangladesh, led by the Open University in the UK, in partnership with the government, is one example of this. The challenge was to improve access to teacher education and at the same time encourage school-based learning. The solution: audio-visual resources for both teachers and learners, made available on cheap and accessible SD cards for low-end mobile phone users. Simple, scalable, and effective. Another example in Uruguay, where there's a serious shortage of trained and qualified teachers. And this led to a program where English is taught remotely by video link by teachers in the Philippines, linking and supporting teachers in the classroom in Uruguay. These are just a few examples, and I'm sure You can cite many more here in India. So in summary, I would suggest that the common thread in innovation is the teacher and the teacher educator. Both are central to the success or otherwise of any innovative idea. And that means you. You who are the real innovators. Not the government, not Microsoft, Infosys, or the British Council. We can support you, but innovation will only come from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rob. I'd like to invite Professor Sunaina Singh, Vice-Chancellor of EFLU.
Mr. Rob Lynes, Minister of Cultural Affairs, British Council, India. Mr. Santhosh Panda, Chairperson of the National Council for Teacher Education. Mr. Sanjay Arora, George Pickering, Michael Connolly, my colleague Professor Paul Gunasekar, distinguished guests, sponsors, media friends, publishers, teacher, faculty friends from across the country, my dear students and research scholars. Namaskar and good morning to all of you. And welcome to Innovation in English Language Teacher Education Conference, the 4th International Conference. Well, my friend Rob has already mentioned that innovation is not easy, but important. How does one innovate? I think this is a question that every teacher needs to ask, because innovation is not just about technology. It is also about how you augment technology with values, how you augment language with the cultural heritage. So this is very important. As teachers, I think we have a huge responsibility. It was John Steinbeck who said that a great teacher is a great artist because he or she shapes the young minds. So it's very important for teacher educators as well as teachers to focus on how a teacher could transform or to innovate oneself before one tries to innovate, bring in new ideas to the fore. Well, Nehruji had said long ago that ignorance is always afraid of change. I think the crux of progress, development, growth is change. And unless we do that, we will not be able to move forward. And as the world shrinks into the global reality, there is a need to reinvent and remodel the frontiers of teacher education. The challenge is to constantly, therefore, innovate the paradigm. It is also seminal, I think, to contour and cement the bond, the Fordism, I would say, of coming together to establish new practices. Unless we share innovation, it cannot, become a reality tomorrow. So we need to share our resources, we need to share our innovation to establish new practices in language learning. I firmly believe that the writers and creative writers play a huge role. I've seen that one of the sessions in this conference is about sonnet reading. I was delighted to see that as an academic primarily, because I believe that creative writers are the creators of language. So let's look at them for innovation as well, when we are teaching. Hodding Carter had once said that the two lasting bequests that a teacher can give to students or to the country or to the world at large is the roots, provide the roots, and provide for the wings. Provide the foundation and strengthen the wings. These are the only two things that we can leave for the nation and for future. So for me, this can come only with a great sense of responsibility. So what we need today is an educated and morally grounded leadership, I would say. I would like to spend a little time, maybe a couple of minutes, to talk about what EFLU has been doing. A key mandate of EFLU is to train language teachers in methods and approaches appropriate to the Indian context. It is therefore important to note that my institution, with its 3 campuses in Shillong, Lucknow, we have just started the COP program in Kerala, and of course, the main campus of Hyderabad has been in the vanguard of teacher education enterprises and research for 55 years. I thought I could use this opportunity to highlight the seminal work that we have been doing. A very quick recap would be the ELTI support scheme that we have. It's a Government of India sponsored project, that is English Language Teaching Institutes, that were launched in 1985 at the beginning of the 7th 5-year plan and has continued since. The objective of ELTIs is to offer in-service development programs to teachers of English at the secondary school level, to offer assistance in the production of teaching material as well, and to help the teachers undertake research projects to improve English language teaching, and also to augment the role of the teacher trainer in ELT and help the resource persons at the district center level. The hallmark of ELTI, according to me, is the notable in-service enrichment program that we offer, although each institute adopts a pattern of training that suits the local requirement and the needs. The staple programs are generally 9-month postgraduate diploma in the teaching of English, a 16-week PG certificate or diploma in English language teaching, a 12-week enrichment program for resource persons, and a 1-month teacher development program. We also have the district center scheme that is again sponsored by Government of India, but I think we have taken huge strides in this direction. We were in operation from 1985. The effort is to augment and enrich ourselves. I think the ELTI centers, through them we have trained about 13,000 teachers, and the district centers have also been very close to it. The other mandate that we have had is to establish centers of English language training across Southeast Asia and Asia. The CELT in Sri Lanka is a notable endeavor where we have started a digital language laboratory. 2 batches of 40 English language master teacher trainers were trained by EFLU faculty. Right now, there's a meeting happening in Delhi between the President of Sri Lanka and the Government of India. I was supposed to be there, but I thought it's better to be here on the home ground and encourage innovation for the English teacher education, because this would happen anyway. So I had to very quickly send a report and come here this morning. For the last 3 decades, EFLU has regularly organized training programs for teachers of English at school level. The Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan, Navodaya Vidyalaya Sangathan, Andhra Pradesh Residential School Society, AP Social Welfare Residential Educational Institutions Society, and the Tribal Welfare Residential School Society. We have been training, I think we're committed to this, and our faculty has been doing a tremendous job. Maybe a round of applause for our faculty members here. The UK-India partnership, I hope I have 2 more minutes to complete. I must mention this because we are talking about partnerships and innovation. UK-India English partnerships, last year we were discussing this in London, and I must thank my friends from British Council. I cannot overemphasize the immense potential for abiding partnerships between UK universities and the other academic institutions that have a stake in language and language education with EFLU. A premier university, I would say, in India that specializes in language education. Of the 41 central universities in India, EFLU is absolutely unique, sui generis, as we say in Latin, one of its kind. In its conception and function, a university that has over 200 faculty members in 3 campuses, all of whom have specialized in different aspects of language study and language education. What is so significant in EFLU's substantial international outreach is my suggestion that serious collaboration with UK universities on the basis of two factors. One, the rich source of ELT research in India as demonstrated by EFLU's contribution. And two, the findings of the British Council timely online study titled ELT Partnership in India that was conducted recently and which substantiates my thesis that the time is ripe for formalizing an intense academic relationship that already exists between the two countries in ELT, courtesy the British Council. We need to take this forward, and I look forward to more innovative research in this particular line. And let me end by just saying the new generation will be created by the teachers. So the teacher education and how we train our teachers is of paramount importance. While innovation is essential, let us not bypass the cultural values. I firmly believe that language is the only means to promote the cultural segment of a country. When we lose languages, we lose the cultures as well. So let us not do that. In our quest for English, we have to sustain our culture, we have to promote innovation, but we also need to retain how the value systems, I would say. So let us continue the task that has been set out by C.S. Lewis, professor from Oxford, a writer, novelist, poet, who said that the task of the modern educator is to irrigate deserts. Let us do that. Thank you. Thank you. And all the best.
Thank you very much, Professor Singh. I'd like to invite Professor Santhosh Panda, Chairperson of the National Council for Teacher Education, to formally inaugurate the conference.
Dignitaries on the dais, including Rob Lynes, Director, Professor Sunaina Singh, Vice Chancellor, CUEFL, Professor Paul Gunasekar, Mr. Sanjay Arora, our good friend Michael Connolly, some of the colleagues, the other side, Professor Simon Borg, Professor Emma Matthew, colleagues from the British Council, distinguished scholar delegates to this international conference of teacher educators, colleagues from media, ladies and gentlemen. We are a regulator, the National Council for Teacher Education, and right now we are functioning. The entire teacher education is being transformed under legal scrutiny, under the direct supervision of the Honorable Supreme Court. And therefore, I'm not sure about English language teaching and English teacher educators, but certainly teacher education as such is undergoing considerable transformation. And therefore, I think they say that like the judges in the court, they have to meet people when people come to them. They don't go out to meet people. I think we as regulators, it's very important for me to be here that we are going out to meet people, to meet colleagues, to get feedback, what exactly we'll be doing. I'm reminded of one innovation that was introduced in school education by the Central Board of Secondary Education, the continuing comprehensive evaluation that they introduced. In Delhi public schools, when I look at, one repercussion has been that they have been teaching Hindi through English, you see. So English is there, but to learn Hindi, the students have to, and teachers and students have to engage in English language, to use English language to learn Hindi. This is one of the, this was certainly not in CCE. CCE basically talked about a culturally wrought change in the entire teaching learning process, which which they would say that if you go beyond the behavioristic and cognitivistic strategy to a more, I'm forgetting the word, you have to engage yourself in context. If teaching is a creative, reflective practice, learning is certainly engagement in practice in context, and context means a culturally wrought context. And therefore, when we look at teacher educators and educating teacher educators, we need to very seriously look at this perspective. That's what has been our guiding force at the National Council for Teacher Education for quite some time, and we do hope that we will proceed in that direction. One important consideration that has come to our fore. For instance, if we look at the University Grants Commission, they would simply say, elsewhere in the world also, that to be able to be a teacher, in fact, to be able to be invited to the interview for a teachership at the university college and the university, you need to have a PhD degree, which is basically a research degree. In fact, of late, what we have realized is that how come a research degree would contribute to successful teaching at the initial stage of a career of a teacher. Therefore, it is important that we seriously look at what is going on in the academic staff colleges, the orientation programs and the refresher programs. In fact, nothing much has been achieved. Therefore, it's not surprising, therefore, that the University Grants Commission is seriously re-looking at how could, say for instance, if I bring the example of the British higher education, the Higher Education Quality Council would like to introduce a certificate or a diploma in teaching through the Higher Education Academy, which is an essential qualification now to get into the job of teaching. Based on which, and a lot of work that is being done in the career, the Higher Education Funding Council would consider to provide funds. And therefore, it is essential at this stage. I'm not sure about English language because this is language, English language teaching, and there is a teaching certificate available for a teacher to get into classroom and otherwise to teach. Therefore, it is essential that we introduce a certificate or a diploma in teaching to be able to be competent enough to start a career of teaching. We introduced for quite some time back in 2009, and Bob talked about that, the National Curriculum Framework of Teacher Education, NCFTE 2009. We are not sure how many universities are in fact transforming their teacher education curriculum based on the NCFTE 2009. This needs a serious exercise, and as Professor Sunaina said, that CUEFL is seriously into transforming the curriculum based on the NCFTE, maybe beyond, because NCFTE 2009 needs revision too. Continuing professional development, therefore, assumes more importance. What we have said as a regulator is that any first degree should be through face-to-face. Like any other profession, teaching as a profession, the first degree should be face-to-face. And the continuing professional development has to be done through a process of, you could call it blended learning, open distance learning, whatever you would like to call that, a flexible learning, and whatever you would like to, online learning, whatever you would like to call that. We are looking at two perspectives, two important dimensions. One, that like any other profession, the teaching profession, the duration of the teacher preparation for teaching profession must increase. Therefore, what we are saying is that we will introduce, we have already, and we're working on that, we will introduce, after +2, grade 12, a 2-year diploma in elementary education. Again, after +2, we will introduce a 4-year integrated elementary education to be able to teach up to grade 8. Again, after +2, a 4-year integrated secondary education leading to a BSc B.Ed or BA B.Ed to be able to teach at the elementary stage up to grade 8 and secondary up to grade 10. We will have a second graduate degree in the form of a B.Ed of 2 years after graduation and a master's degree of 2 years after B.Ed. We're also trying to work out, as a profession, must increase. Simultaneously, and therefore yesterday as we were talking about, we would like to look at more seriously that how English teacher education has to be seen within this framework, and also getting into recognition and accreditation process separately other than what the University Grants Commission and the National Assessment and Accreditation Council is doing. And therefore it is important that we would like to engage with this process. And it has not been so far. We would like to engage with this process and see that how English language teacher educators program, therefore teacher education program, would get into a process. We need to work out on this. This is the first reason why the duration should be increased. The second reason is that how could technology, because Bob talked about extensively about use of technology, and how can technology be brought forward to the fore of? One important framework that comes to my mind immediately is, in my Fulbright, for instance, I worked on an area, in fact, an area that we worked in the earlier form of UCARI is the Higher Education Link project. I worked with the Manchester Metropolitan University colleagues to develop what is called, in those days, OER was not a buzzword, actually. We developed actually open education resources for facilitating college and university teachers to get into research more seriously. And that was an open education resource under Higher Education Link. And therefore, what we discovered in the process, which led to my work in my Fulbright is, for instance, how technology will get into that. One framework I would like to introduce, if you permit me. But before that, let me say what I did. I was looking at that if you are talking about fully online, and in fact, the United States, fully online is not going to work anymore. And in India, we do believe that online is not working in any case. And therefore, we would like to get into what is called blended learning. But let me talk about one thing, that the work that I did, and which has some implications for this, that we are talking about technology, pedagogy, and teaching and learning, assessment and evaluation, for instance. One work that I did, that when you say that you are learning online or you're teaching online, you are an offline guy, certainly. So therefore, what is happening online or offline is, what I looked at is the transformation of the identity of the teacher educator as a professional developer, as a human being, the transformation of identity, I underline, and transformation of identity. And therefore my work looked at how can online and offline congruity of this identity transformation could take place. And what is that framework that we'd look at? This is just one simple example that how we look at seriously technology to be able to guide, whether it is social networks or social technologies that are available today, wide varieties, including mobile technologies that are available today. So this is one framework that we would like to look at. And the second is blended learning. The framework that I'm talking about is, you must be familiar with this, the technological pedagogical content knowledge. That you know your subject very well, what kind of methodologies or pedagogies you need to bring in to teach your subject. And therefore today, every teacher needs to engage with what kind of technologies would be facilitating what kind of subject teaching or concept teaching with the help of what kind of pedagogical methodologies. So therefore, technological pedagogical content knowledge is one of the important frameworks that are in front of us to guide us that how technology will be facilitating teachers to get into teaching learning process. And finally, I would like to say that it is very important that the conference is focusing on three important aspects of innovation, continuing professional development, and technology. I understand there are three thematic areas, and we would certainly look forward to the outcomes of the conference in terms of, because we're looking at very seriously now at NCTE innovation. Innovation in teacher education, when they put up a 12 years of B.Ed program, if you put up innovation as a 16 months, 12 months of B.Ed program, if you put up as a 16 months B.Ed program, it becomes innovative. Innovations don't work that way in any case. So certainly we look forward to the innovative methodologies, innovative strategies, and innovation in teacher education and innovation for educating teacher educators per se. We look forward to that within the framework of a continuing professional development. Finally, I must say that we are getting into, we'll of course of late get engaged with English language teaching and English language teachers and English language teacher educators. Subsequently, we would certainly like from our side to engage ourselves with this. But we are getting into one framework, I must clarify of late, that we would do hand-holding. Based on the hand-holding, we'll proceed towards recognition. From recognition, we will get into monitoring. From monitoring, we will get into continuing professional development. From continuing professional development is a continuing process. From there, we will get into assessment and accreditation, and finally, the authority that we do not have is withdrawal. So this is a framework within which we would like to work, and therefore, increased duration, bringing in continuing professional development, whether it is face-to-face or through blended learning or through open distance learning, and finally, getting into a framework of national teacher education, which do not have right now. We need to develop a framework, a national framework of teacher education based on all these perspectives. With this, I congratulate the organizers for this conference and formally inaugurate the conference. Thank you very much.